Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I'm Tricia Gerardet, your facilitator for today's service. Welcome to everyone in person and for those on Zoom to a time of celebration and deep connection. Now let's celebrate the code of silence by silencing our cell phones. Mine's done. For our newcomers, we're happy to have you here and invite you to check out our church. Hope you were welcomed at the door and in the community room. That's where we'll meet after the service and have some coffee and tea and refreshments. And because today is the first Sunday of the month, we have birthday cakes. Yay! Is anybody out there a July birthday baby? Oh, Kurt, yep, I know Burl, okay, is that it? Oh, and Joe, yeah, no, oh. Kirk, yeah, Kirk was, and Roland in the back, all right. Shall we sing? Is our pianist ready to do that? Happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you, happy birthday dear Kirk and Roland, happy birthday to you.
Add many more.
If you would like to receive the church newsletter, I don't see Deborah Smith, but Becky Tanner is here, and you can connect with her if you want to be added to the list.
Just need your email.
Yep, need the email to do that. Let's see, a reminder that if you wish to have a particular joy or sorrow or an announcement, although it's a bit late for that, please remember to fill out the form that we have in the back, preferably before it begins, certainly before the announcements. And for those on Zoom, if you wish to contribute at the right time, you can unmute yourself and contribute. And Chris is trying to get my attention. Yes, sir.
I put the joy thing up there, but I put it under probably a name I could have done better.
Did anybody got a joy back there from Chris?
I put it on the
Okay.
the name was under Paul Schultz. But
Yes, I have that.
technically it's Tina's joy / sorrow
Okay.
about Paul Schultz.
Got it. When I get to it, I will say that that is from Reverend Tina. Okay. All right. I do have a couple of announcements. The first one is from Molly, and she says, the first Friday hike will be this coming Friday, 8 a.m. We're making a second trip to Chiricahua National Monument for those who didn't get to see it last month. And some of us know the story.
Don't need to repeat it.
And if you don't know the story, you can talk to Becky. So they're trying again. And my announcement is that I wanted to put in a reminder that Tina is on vacation. And Tina being Tina, if you write to her, she will probably engage and respond. So I'm encouraging everyone to be mindful that unless it's an emergency, please hold off on, asking her questions and see if someone else can't help you. And let's let her really be on vacation. Thank you.
May I say something?
Yes.
As I
Ms.
left her at the airport at 4 a.m. last Monday morning, the last words I said to her was, "You are on vacation. Quit working."
So for those on Zoom, Becky is saying that she also admonished Tina to be on vacation. And I have two more announcements. The Tuesday meditation group will not be meeting this Tuesday, July 4th. They will resume the following Tuesday, July 11th at 11 a.m. And free thinkers are meeting today after church, I assume. Yeah? Yeah? Okay. Now, also being the first Monday, this is when we read together our covenant of right relations, to remind ourselves of how we commit to living together peacefully, lovingly, and healthfully. So please read with me the slide that is up there. We, the congregation of Sky Island Unitarian Universalist Church, Covenant 2, treat all beings with compassion and kindness, listen actively and speak responsibly, seek understanding and be open to change, acknowledge our imperfections and our differences with good humor, devote our energies to creating and maintaining a vibrant, beloved community among ourselves and in the greater world.
Our chalice lighting words are from Audette Fulbright Fulson. This light we kindle is set in the lamp of our history. We inherit this free faith from the brave and gentle, fierce and outspoken hearts and minds that have come before us. Let us be worthy inheritors of this faith, and through our good works, pass it boldly to a new generation. Let us join in the spirit of prayer and meditation. We give thanks this morning for the blessing of beloved community and the blessing of those who came before us on whose shoulders we stand. We ask for courage and strength in the face of our trials and those of the world. We hold peace in our hearts. May we make the most of our blessings in making our own world and that of the greater world a better place. Amen.
Apologies, I had forgotten to introduce the Reverend. I don't have a bio for her, but some of us have been here long enough to know that she was our minister here for a year. We think it was 2012, 2013. And it's nice to have her back for occasional visits. So some of us remember her. This is the time for joys and sorrows. Are there any more in the back of the room to add? No. If there's anyone on Zoom who has a joy or sorrow and wishes to speak it, you may do so. And hopefully either Chris or I can figure out how to make you heard. So we have a sorrow or a concern from the Reverend Tina, written out by son Christopher. July 2nd, which is today, Burl underwent spinal surgery on Friday and is spending time sleeping it off. And good thoughts are appreciated. And Burl hasn't been here for a while, so some of you may not know him, but we send him good thoughts and hope we will see him. Richard Spencer has a sorrow, and it's a sorrow I share as well. Richard says that he discovered on Friday that he's a second-class citizen and that a business can refuse him service based on who he is. Even worse, the Supreme Court ruling is based on an incident that never even took place. And in a similar spirit, I have multiple sorrows for a number of decisions that have come out in the past few weeks from this Supreme Court. So I've added stones to the bowl to signify our caring for our community. I will add a stone to show joy, although we didn't have any written out. I'll add several stones for the joys or sorrows present in our hearts, but not spoken out loud. And then I'll add a whole bunch of stones to the bowl to reveal our commitment to the joys and sorrows of the rest of the world, and they are numerous. We make this commitment each week, knowing the life and experience of every person matters, and together our lights shine brighter.
Our story today is about two girls who made a big splash in the world. The girlhood of Mary Safford and Eleanor Gordon. More than 150 years ago in the United States, two girls were born in Indiana in neighboring farms. What we now know as the Midwest was considered the frontier in the 1850s. In those days, most people thought that women could not be as intelligent or strong as men, that they should get married and keep house or remain at home with their parents. These girls were not interested in either. They both loved to read. Mary Safford's family had a large collection of books. Her father was considered a radical, embracing new ideas like Darwin's theory of evolution, which often got him in trouble with their Presbyterian church. Mary was only 9 years old when he died, but she continued to read those new ideas which were challenging people's conventional ways of understanding the world. She loved to pretend to be a minister and preach to family and friends, and she was determined to become a minister someday, though that was considered crazy and impossible by most, including her mother. Her friend Eleanor Gordon from the neighboring farm also had the opportunity to read from the many religious journals of family members practicing different forms of Christianity and spiritualism. Her father was from New Hampshire back east and was a Unitarian, though there was no Unitarian church in their town in Illinois. The Gordon family loved to debate religious ideas, so the habit of questioning and of thinking for herself was established in Eleanor. Mary and Eleanor were best friends and loved to sit under the apple tree in the orchard and talk of their religious questions and liberal ideas. When Eleanor asked a challenging question in Sunday school one morning and was shut down, she decided she needed to trust her own thinking. She laughed at the notion of hell. The two friends talked and shared ideas and encouraged one another's confidence and independence, as girls do. Both wanted badly to go to college, but neither family had a lot of money. They both managed to get some college education, but they had to continue trying to educate themselves as young women by reading whatever they could find. They were inspired by founders of the country and progressive thinkers like Thomas Paine, Thomas Jefferson, and Benjamin Franklin, and from more contemporary progressive Unitarian thinkers and writers such as Ralph Waldo Emerson, William Ellery Channing, and Theodore Parker. They were drawn to the Unitarian values of reason and exploration of new ideas. Some of their family members were not at all happy with their ambitions. One day, not long after their teenage years, the two sat down under the apple tree and promised to work together as a team to advance their Unitarian faith. They started the Hawthorne Literary Society, which included many women, and where they debated ethical and religious questions, discussed written works, and invited guest speakers. Oscar Clute, a Unitarian minister from a nearby town, was a favorite. When Mary and Eleanor, as young women, decided to start a new Unitarian church in their town, Reverend Clute was very supportive and encouraging. Together, the two young women started their work, and very soon they were so admired by liberal religionists seeking a spiritual home that their little congregation was seeing more than 200 people at Sunday service every week and had another small church started. The struggles of many of the people of the West had made them become independent thinkers and ready to discard old conventions, and Unitarianism answered their longing. Before long, Mary and Eleanor were asked to take on another church in need of leadership. Mary was not long afterward ordained as a minister, and Eleanor, a teacher and school principal, shared the work of ministering. She knew the importance of education in forming robust ethical and spiritual character. In time, Eleanor was also ordained, and together they served many struggling congregations on the frontier and assisted many other women to be ordained as well. They proved that not only could women be wonderful ministers, but they could succeed where men had not. For the rest of their lives, they remained fierce in their faithfulness to the Unitarian ideals of trying to serve people and make the world a better place. Their story is not well known, but now you know it too. I hope you will take inspiration from them and from your own friends in following your dreams.
All right, there we go. The first reading is by Elizabeth Barrett Browning. The title is 1856, A Male Character's Point of View. So this is how she thinks males think in this time and would be saying to her, "Therefore, this same world, uncomprehended by you, must remain uninfluenced by you. Women, as you are, mere women, personal and passionate, you give us doting mothers and chaste wives, sublime Madonnas and enduring saints. We get no Christ from you, and verily we shall not get a poet in my mind." Ooh.
Just a chuckle.
The second reading is from Margaret Fuller, and it's in our gray hymnal. It's number 575, if you wish to follow along. Sarah Margaret Fuller lived May 23rd, 1810 to July 19, 1850. So she was only 40 years old. Was an American journalist, editor, critic, translator, and women's rights advocate associated with the American Transcendentalism movement. She was the first American female war correspondent and full-time book reviewer in journalism. Her book, Woman in the 19th Century, is considered the first major feminist work in the United States. A new manifestation is at hand. A new hour is come, when man and woman may regard one another as brother and sister, able both to appreciate and to prophesy to one another. What woman needs is not as a woman to act or rule, but as a nature to grow, as an intelligence to discern, as a soul to live freely and unimpeded, to unfold such powers as were given to her. Man does not have his fair share either. His energies are repressed and distorted by the interposition of artificial obstacles. We would have every arbitrary barrier thrown down. We would have every path laid open to woman as freely as to man. Were this done, we believe a divine energy would pervade nature to a degree unknown in the history of former ages. A new manifestation is at hand. A new hour is come.
I came up with a really long title for this sermon. Little known UU history, women ministers on the frontier, stories of a small, brief, but significantly influential group of women taking on professional ministry at the turn of the 20th century in the U.S. Who knew? History. I have come to appreciate historians and biographers who offer us stories of the times which have been obscured or distorted. Stories inform my perspective. I have poor memory of dates and names, so much so that the Ministerial Fellowship Committee delayed my entry into fellowship with credentialed UU ministers until I had firmed up my knowledge of UU history by teaching a course in it to my home congregation. But prior to that, I had been surprised and amazed in seminary to find the book, Prophetic Sisterhood, Liberal Women Ministers of the Frontier, 1880 to 1930, by Cynthia Grant Tucker. And I know y'all are going to want to order this online because it's really good reading and stuff that a lot of us didn't know. It helped me to understand the conspiracy of forgetfulness in the historical record, in this case regarding women, and it was full of wonderful stories and insights. In the 1880s, Harvard Divinity School in Boston refused to admit women and held to the position that women would sully the manliness of the professional ministry. And thank goodness we did. The graduates of Harvard were reluctant to go to the wilds of the frontier to try to build new congregations, and instead preferred taking positions in established Unitarian churches in New England. Some did try, and predominantly failed to understand the sensibilities of frontier people. Jenkin Lloyd Jones was the missionary secretary of the Western Unitarian Conference. He was in charge of supporting the planting and growing of Unitarian congregations throughout the West. He was also a believer in the inherent dignity and worth of women, in the minority among men at the time of that opinion, including Unitarian men, at least at Harvard. The Universalists had ordained the first woman minister, Olympia Brown, in 1863, despite opposition to her ordination. There were only a handful of women in various faiths becoming recognized as women, as ministers. Jones readily recognized the powerful talents in Mary Safford and Eleanor Gordon, and there began a small surge of women ministers in the Unitarian Church in the West. Safford and Gordon took on several women along the way as assistants and helped them and others, along with Jones's support, to attend seminary and serve as professional ministers. These women were constantly up against the kind of sexist opposition expressed in Elizabeth Barrett Browning's poetry. They found comfort and strength in one another's company whenever they could, and became known as the Iowa Sisterhood. Many of them became involved in the women's suffrage movement, and some becoming personal friends with Susan B. Anthony and other movement leaders. Sisterhood was essential in buoying up these women and offering respite from the crushing bias against women taking on professional roles. Together, they could reaffirm their intelligence, their ministerial gifts, their enthusiasm to serve and to reform. One of the things that struck me about these stories was the general understanding in the 1880s that a person could not be expected to engage in professional ministry and also attend to domestic tasks at home. Their congregation saw to it that they had housekeepers. In seminary, I was a single mother working full-time and studying almost full-time, and boy, was I jealous of those housekeepers. Actually, I just let housekeeping go altogether, and that has served me well. Many of the sisterhood declined to marry, knowing that society and their husbands would expect them to put their energy into raising children and keeping house, rather than the ministry. Some did marry, and some found ardent support for their work from their marriage, but some were obliged to give up the ministry in the end, actually really pissing off Safford and Gordon. The Unitarians and the Universalists were among the first to recognize the talents of women in ministry and remain today in the forefront among religious organizations in recognizing the worth of women, people of color, and LGBTQ persons, although we all still have a long way to go. I am grateful for this recognition, especially in the light of the continued denial in many denominations and in the Supreme Court. It was heartening to discover this piece of history. While the scholarly preaching of the Harvard men who came to the West failed to ignite the interest of many Westerners, these Western women brought a more pastoral energy to their ministries. They emphasized the notion of the congregation as a family and understood the value of tending relationships in nurturing and enduring faith. They were more interested than their male counterparts in making visits to the sick, and they fostered commitment to engagement in social justice work and in serving the poor and outcast. Safford's and Gordon's experience of managing their family's limited finances as girls made them fine fiscal stewards in their parishes. They were also powerful preachers and writers, and this new balanced and comprehensive approach to ministry, it eventually spread throughout the faith, becoming now the norm, especially in the West still. This prophetic sisterhood planted the seed of transformation in ministry, much behind the scenes and unrecognized. In 1875, there were 43 Unitarian societies in the Western Conference with a collective debt of $100,000. By 1884, The number of congregations had grown to 87, with a collective debt of only $7,000. The Iowa Sisterhood was in some great measure responsible for this success. As I mentioned before, Harvard held fast against the admission of women for a very long time. The West was wiser. The School of Liberal Theology in Meadville, Pennsylvania, educated most of the Iowa Sisterhood. Women serving congregations in Iowa, Wisconsin, Michigan, North Dakota, and others. Later, Meadville merged with the Universalist Seminary, Lombard College in Illinois, creating Meadville Lombard Theological School in Chicago, one of only 2 remaining UU cemeteries. I just did my mother's graveside service in the cemetery. 2 UU seminaries remain. And at Meadville Lombard, I achieved my own Master of Divinity degree. I remember a large portrait of Mary Safford, the one you've seen on the slides, in the stairwell, watching over us as we climbed the stairs to the library, women students outnumbering men. The names of the passionate and determined women Unitarian ministers in the West in the late 1800s and early 1900s are few. Let me speak their names. Mary Safford, 1851 to 1927. Eleanor Gordon, 1852 to 1942. Florence Buck, 1860 to 1925. Mary Edith Colson, 1870 to 1953. Carolyn Julia Bartlett Crane, 1858 to 1935. Adele Fuchs, 1872 to 1956. Marie Hoffendahl Jenny Howe, 1870 to 1934. Ida Holton, 1858 to 1938. Mary Leggett, 1857 to 1938. Rowena Morse Mann, 1870 to 1958. Mila Tucker Maynard, 1864 to 1926. Amelia Murdoch Wing, 1852 to 1949. Marion Murdoch, 1850 to 1943. Anna Jane Norris, 1851 to 1925. Margaret Titus Olmsted, 1860 to 1950. Estella Elizabeth Padgham, 1874 to 1952. Gertrude von Petzold, 1876 to 1952. Helen Grace Putnam, 1840 to 1895. Eliza Tupper Wilkes, 1844 to 1917. Helen Wilson, 1883 to 1926. Celia Parker Woolley, 1848 to 1918. May their names remain in the history books and in our memories. They served congregations in Illinois, Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, California, Iowa, Florida, Massachusetts, Nebraska, Indiana, and New Jersey. Gradually, the support for women in the ministry fell into decline, in part due to wars, which tended to bring people back to narrower views and enabled predominant men to withdraw their support of women in their profession. Many women were forced to retire earlier than they wished simply because they could not find churches that would call them. They did, however, continue community ministry as leaders in social justice movements like women's suffrage, advocating for peace and reconciliation, education, and addressing the needs of the poor. Reading their stories, I was struck by their fervent faith and devotion to working toward a more ethical world. Perhaps their urgency was fed by the unrelenting opposition to their very being, and it worked, even though their lives were exhausting. The sisterhood helped one another along in carrying the burdens and sparked inspiration and renewed energy and spirit over and over. I know that I depend on my collegial relationships to restore my faith and inspiration, and here in the Pacific Southwest, we have extraordinary friendliness and support as a group of ministers. My beloved colleagues keep me going. I like to think also that my wife Hannah, an ordained UU minister, and I reflect some of the spirit of that prophetic sisterhood, wrestling with ideas of theology, spirituality, and social justice, and working together in ministry when we can to co-create sacred experience and meaning. Those women paved the way for all of us. May we all realize some measure of their zeal and devotion to nurture this faith in this world. May it be so.
Our closing words are from the Reverend Krista Tavis, The Work We Share. The Reverend Krista is a native Canadian and serves as the Minister of Congregational Life at Elliott Unitarian Chapel in Kirkwood, Missouri. It is our work shared with each other in covenant that creates and sustains this beloved community. We extinguish this chalice, but its light lives on in the directions we have chosen today. The light of this faith lives on in us together, in our hearts, minds, bodies, and spirits. Amen, and blessed be.